The opening weeks of the year 1665 were particularly cold, and the sub-zero temperatures had discouraged the King of England, Charles II, from writing to his sister Henrietta in France. He was always a lazy correspondent, and having little news to impart, thought it pointless to freeze my fingers for nothing. In early February, however, he took up his pen to report that the two of them had acquired a new niece. On the 6th of February, shortly before midnight, at St. James's Palace in London, their younger brother James, Duke of York, had become a father to a healthy baby girl. Being without a legitimate heir, the king would have preferred a boy, and since Henrietta herself was expecting a child, Charles told her that he trusted she would have better luck in this respect. In one way, however, the Duchess of York had been fortunate, for she had had a remarkably quick labour, having dispatched her business in little more than an hour. Charles wrote that he wished Henrietta an equally speedy delivery when her time came, though he feared that her slender frame meant that she was not so advantageously made for that convenience as the far more substantially built Duchess. The king concluded that in that event a boy will recompense 2 grunts more. The child was named Anne, after her mother, and if her birth was a disappointment, at least it did not cause the sort of furore that had greeted the appearance in the world of the Duke and Duchess of York's firstborn child in 1660. That baby had initially been assumed to have been born out of wedlock, but when it emerged that the infant's parents had in fact secretly married just before the child's birth, there was fury that the Duke of York had matched himself with a loose woman, who was not of royal blood. Many people shared the view expressed by the diarist Samuel Pepys, that he doth get a wench with child, and marries her afterward. It is as if a man should shit in his hat and then clap it upon his head. The scandal was particularly regrettable, because the monarchy was fragile. Charles II had only been on his throne since May 1660, after an 11-year interregnum. In 1649, his father, King Charles I, had been executed. This followed his defeat in a civil war that had started in 1642, when political and religious tensions had caused a total breakdown in relations between king and parliament. During that conflict, an estimated 190,000 people, nearly 4% of the population, had lost their lives in England and Wales alone. In Scotland and Ireland, the proportion of inhabitants who perished was still higher. Charles I had been taken prisoner in 1646, but refused to come to terms with his opponents, and so the war had continued. By 1648, however, the Royalists had been vanquished. Angered at the way the king had prolonged the bloodshed, the leaders of the parliamentary forces brought him to trial and sentenced him to death. England became a republic ruled by a Lord Protector, Oliver Cromwell, and it seemed that its monarchy had been extinguished forever. When the Royalists' principal stronghold of Oxford had fallen in the summer of 1646, Charles I's 12-year-old son, James, Duke of York, had been taken into the custody of Parliament. However, in April 1648, he had managed to escape abroad, dressed as a girl. His older brother Charles was already on the continent, having been sent overseas by their father 2 years earlier. James was only 14 when news arrived that his father had been executed on the 30th of January, 1649. In the ensuing decade, all attempts to place Charles on his late father's throne failed, and a lifetime in exile appeared inevitable for the royal brothers.